When people explore abandoned places, the thrill often comes from predictable risks. Things like decaying floors, maybe a warning sign, perhaps startling some wildlife. But today, we're going deeper. We're stepping into that real darkness that lurks beneath the surface. That unpredictable, almost primal fear. The kind that hits when urban exploration collides head-on with, well, human chaos. So we're not just recounting random stories today. We're examining 3 specific accounts. Encounters where explorers went into forbidden territory expecting maybe just ruins, maybe some decay. But instead they found individuals. People who turned that search for adventure into, frankly, a desperate scramble for survival. Our goal here is to really look at these terrifying moments, try to understand that psychological shift. The moment you realize the building isn't the threat, a person is.
Yeah, and I think what's really crucial to grasp right away is the kind of psychological boundary these explorers cross. They go in with a certain risk assessment, right? It's built around things like collapsing structures, maybe getting caught trespassing. But the second they encounter someone whose actions are just fundamentally disconnected from reality, that whole framework just shatters completely. The danger becomes, well, it becomes exponentially harder to gauge, to predict.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Let's dive into our first story then. We're starting at the Royal Hawaiian Motel. It's in Baker, California, abandoned for, over a decade, I think? Yeah, and this explorer chose to go solo at night. Apparently, the desert heat there is just unbearable during the day. Makes sense. Getting in was easy. No security, doors shattered, debris everywhere. Standard stuff for urbexes, really. But then, in that quiet, desolate motel, the first real jolt of fear, the explorer hears a female voice nearby. The immediate thought, security, or maybe someone hostile. So the reaction is instant. Run, hide in a ground-level room, kill the lights.
And that right there, that highlights the first instinct, doesn't it? Self-preservation, hiding to avoid conflict, maybe arrest. The assumption is usually, it's about territory or property.
Right.
But then the explorer turns the light back on and hears this distinct crash from upstairs. Even then, the rationalization is still trying to cling to the predictable, maybe an animal, a raccoon or something.
Right, exactly. But that idea, that rationalization, it didn't last long. As the explorer moved along the upstairs walkway, a sound started to become clearer, louder. It was this consistent, slow, rhythmic banging, like thump, wait 2 seconds, thump, 2 seconds, thump.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, clearly intentional. Not the wind, not the building settling. They knew then, absolutely knew someone was up there. So as they got closer to where the sound was coming from, it just stopped. Dead silence. The explorer called out, I don't mean any harm, that kind of thing. Then peered into this pitch black room and the smell, overpowering. Just feces. They said they were like 50% certain they could see a human shape near the back wall.
See, that combination, the rhythmic banging, then the silence, the overpowering stench, and then seeing a shape. It just builds this escalating dread, doesn't it? You realize, okay, this isn't just someone trespassing like me. This is something else, something deeply private, deeply disturbed, the kind of thing you instinctively know you need to get away from.
And that's exactly when the visual horror just slammed into reality. The explorer finally aimed the flashlight down at the floor, then slowly lifted the beam, and suddenly these 2 pale, bare feet are just coming at them fast.
Oh, no.
The light jerks up and it reveals this woman, bloodied forehead, this yellow guck around her mouth, which was just hanging open like something straight out of a nightmare. That was it. Absolute flight mode kicked in. The explorer just sprinted, ran as fast as possible, hearing this woman screaming, chasing them all the way back to the car.
And it really speaks to the sheer panic of the moment, that it was only later they connected the dots. That initial rhythmic sound, it was almost certainly the woman banging her head again and again against the wall. That explains the bloody forehead. It's just raw, unmanaged mania, encountered totally alone in the middle of nowhere. Terrifying.
And the aftermath, it brings up this really difficult dilemma, right? Psychologically, legally. The explorer felt they couldn't just call 911 because, they'd have to admit to trespassing. So they drove around, desperate, looking for a payphone, thinking they could call anonymously about this deranged, dangerous woman. Ended up just calling the non-emergency line, vaguely reported her, then hung up. The lasting feeling, their core takeaway was just, I'd never encountered anything like that.
And that's the real deep dive point from this story, isn't it? The immediate threat wasn't just the woman herself. It was the sudden, horrible realization that your own illegal presence actually stops you from getting help for someone who is genuinely dangerous, genuinely disturbed, and maybe needs help. You're trapped, caught between incriminating yourself and just immediate survival. It's a horrible bind.
It really is. So if that first story was about panic and that awful bind of self-incrimination, our second account, it shifts the focus. shifts it entirely towards outright aggressive intent. The story involves a group of teenagers. They took a road trip specifically looking for a scary experience. Their target, Bryce Hospital. It's a former psychiatric facility notorious for these dark rumors, stories of patient mistreatment, even torture. You know the type. They got there super late, like 2:43 a.m. Sat in the car for a bit, apparently, just soaking in the darkness, the dread already building. But they pushed on, drove down this overgrown, rough road towards this massive, decaying building, covered in vines. And inside, chillingly, they found pentagrams sprayed on the walls. They were definitely seeking out that classic haunted place vibe.
And that environment itself, a psychiatric hospital with that kind of known history of abuse, it primes them for a very specific kind of fear. They're expecting ghosts, right? Echoes of the past, maybe something supernatural, haunted, which means they're profoundly unprepared for what they actually find. Contemporary physical aggression, they're looking for spirits, not a real-life, high-stakes confrontation.
Exactly. And they did notice some weird little things at first, like a light on the roof that just vanished, a faint sound, maybe like a rock hitting a window somewhere else in the building. Just enough to build the atmosphere, that standard creepiness, Right before the main event, so the group goes down these smashed basement stairs. They pause for a second, catch their breath, and that's when they hear it, a voice. From the back of the room, they just freeze. One of them, the cousin, slowly shines the flashlight towards the far end, and it lands on someone, squatted down, looking towards the wall.
That initial posture, squatting, looking away, it can almost seem non-threatening, maybe even vulnerable, which explains why their first reaction is to ask, hey man, you okay? But the instant he turns, stares blankly, the entire situation flips. It goes from a potential welfare check to an immediate lethal-feeling threat in a split second.
Yeah, the cousin yells out, asks if the man's okay, and he just turns, stares blankly, and then just lets out these wild screams and starts running directly at them.
Wow. No warning, no threat display, just immediate violence.
Pure attack mode. They fled instantly, scrambled out of a window, running blind through the woods in pitch darkness, hitting trees, stumbling, and they could hear him right behind them. They got lost out there for like an hour before they finally stumbled back to their car, but it wasn't over. As they got close to the car, they heard rustling in the bushes nearby. Then a rock comes flying out, hits one of the friends.
Oh, man.
And the man bursts out of the bush, running after them again. They jumped in the car, sped off just as he reached it, banging on the windows with a glass bottle he was holding.
See, the introduction of a weapon there, the rock, then the glass bottle, that escalates things dramatically. This isn't just someone trying to scare them off. This moves into the realm of outright attempted assault. The intent seems unmistakable and totally unhinged. This is what we might call active aggression in this context. A threat that goes way beyond just deterrence. It targets actual physical harm. It completely changes the dynamic from exploration to just high-speed survival.
That kind of extreme physical threat. It brings us to our third and final account. And this one, it hinges on something maybe even more unsettling than direct violence. It hinges on ambiguity, pure psychological creepiness. This story is set out in the Georgia countryside. It involves two brothers, Seb, who was 18, and the narrator, who was 15. They were heading towards this huge abandoned house, but before they even got to the property itself, while they were walking down this cracked, overgrown concrete road, they saw her, a woman, walking behind them. And the details are just immediately unnerving. She was walking slowly, smiling constantly. And this is the really disturbing part. Both of her hands were folded and hidden behind her back the entire time.
Okay, yeah. This is where we get into what you might call context-free terror. Think about the other two stories. The screaming man was clearly aggressive. The woman in the motel was obviously distressed, self-harming. But here, the threat is veiled, hidden. She approaches them, offers this perfectly normal pleasantry, right? Lovely day-to-day, isn't it? Standard small talk. But then, completely out of context, as she gets right up close to them, she just states, I have to go to bed now.
Yeah. That statement, just hanging there, no reason, no lead-up. That, combined with the constant unnerving smile and those hidden hands, it just destroys any possibility of a normal interaction. It's just deeply weird. They managed to kind of speed up, get away from her, and make it to the house. It was massive, really deteriorated on the outside. But surprisingly, the inside was almost fully furnished. Like decorations still on the walls, old clothes lying around, even rotten food still in the fridge. Apparently, the smell was just overwhelming, like a smell of death, the narrator said. So after checking the upper floors, they went down into this furnished basement. It was covered in loose papers everywhere. While they were down there, they heard this distinct thump from upstairs. Clear sound. But they dismissed it. Oh, just the old house settling. You know how it is.
That's such a common mistake, isn't it? Rationalizing the sound is totally understandable. Your nerves are already frayed. But it serves as that classic horror trope almost. They know, on some level, something might be upstairs, but they choose to believe the explanation that involves the structure, not the human element they just encountered.
And that belief, that dismissal, it lasted only until they went back upstairs and reached a bedroom hallway. Seb, the older brother, suddenly whispered the narrator's name. But the tone was described as concerned, scared sounding. And standing there, in the doorway of another bedroom, was the woman from the road, still smiling.
Oh, chills, just standing there waiting.
Apparently, and then she delivered the final, most terrifying line. She looked at them and asked, still smiling, "Do you want to see what's behind my back?"
Wow.
That was it, the breaking point. Seb just screamed, pushed his younger brother, and they bolted, sprinting flat out, running until they were completely out of sight of the house, totally exhausted. The whole mystery, what was she holding? Why the smile? That unnatural demeanor, it defined the entire escape. The brothers later figured maybe she was disturbed, maybe escaped from somewhere. But the core terror remained that unanswered question. What was she holding behind her back the whole time?
And that right there, that is the absolute essence of unsettling ambiguity. She wasn't actively chasing them, not initially. She didn't scream or make a direct physical threat. Instead, she offered a choice, almost an invitation into her own private madness. The real horror isn't necessarily the object itself, which they never saw, it's the control she exerted. By making them the audience to her secret, she forced their flight based purely on the anticipation of what that smile, those hidden hands, concealed. It's psychological manipulation almost.
So when we look at all three of these accounts together, you've got the woman banging her head, trapped in this cycle of self-harm and isolation. Then the screaming man, clearly intent on direct, maybe lethal aggression, calculated violence. And finally, the smiling woman, wielding this deep psychological ambiguity as her weapon. We really see three distinct types of human horror encountered in these isolated, abandoned settings.
Yeah, the common thread is the complete breakdown of rational expectation. The moment the explorer realizes they're not just dealing with crumbling plaster or a rusty nail, but they are face to face with some deep, private human trauma. And that trauma is now manifesting as an immediate, unpredictable, and potentially physical threat. The entire game changes instantly. The emotional impact, I think, comes from that sudden, jarring transition from curiosity and maybe a little thrill-seeking to just utter helplessness.
Each of these individuals, in their own way, forced these explorers to confront a very specific, very personalized kind of terror. So the question we leave you with is this. Thinking about these three encounters, the self-destructive mania, the outright violent aggression, and the deeply unsettling ambiguity, which of these specific kinds of unpredictable madness and the unexplainable intent behind them do you find the most terrifying to imagine encountering, alone, in the dead of night? We hope this deep dive into these truly horrifying accounts has given you, well, plenty to think about. Maybe keep you up tonight. Make sure to like this, share it with someone who appreciates the darker side of exploration, and definitely subscribe to Horror Doc so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll catch you next time.